Welcome to the keynote address of the 2013 Research Showcase. I am Setara Alizadeh, Senior in the Creative Media and Digital Culture program. This is an important university event in that it showcases achievements of scholarship and creative endeavors that faculty, students, and staff have undertaken during the year. My fellow students and I have been asked to give the introductory remarks about our speaker, Douglas Rushkoff. Because for the past 3 months, we have been involved in the project that surrounds his visit, Next Chapter. I have served as project manager for it, and in doing so, have been in charge of making sure that the website, the social media, the mobile app, the iBook study guide, now available for download at the Apple App Store, the posters, the announcement cards, the bookmarks, and the stickers, designed and developed by my team, get completed. I'm now going to turn the microphone over to my teammate, Aaron Hahn.
I'm just going to leave it here. Thank you, Seti. My name is Aaron Hahn. I've served as the social media strategist for Next Chapter. And as a side note, I'm pleased to mention that my involvement in this project afforded me a paid internship at Clark College. And I see we have many members of the Penguin Nation here today, so welcome. It is my pleasure to thank the organizational partners that made this event possible. First and foremost, we thank Washington State University Vancouver's Research and Graduate Education, the CMBC, and the WSU Foundation's Coop Parents Program for providing funding and support. We also thank the Fort Vancouver Regional Library, Friends of the Library, Comcast Internet Essentials, and the Columbian for all of the support and generosity. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you, Aaron. Good afternoon, everyone. So for the last 3 months, my partner, Emily, and I have been really busy with the design work. As Seti mentioned, Douglas's visit to our campus is a major part of Next Chapter. This citywide reading and discussion program is aimed at preparing and invigorating the city of Vancouver, and it's been co-chaired by Dina Gagar and Jack Workman, Vancouver City Councilman. By preparing and invigorating, we mean to promote digital media literacy. We believe that an educated population that recognizes the web fundamentals, the power of social media, the ethics needed to drive manners online, and personal responsibilities is very important for the future of Vancouver. The book chosen to assist this lofty goal is Program to Be Programmed, The 10 Commands of the Digital Age by Douglas Rushkoff. I'll turn the mic over to Spencer Watson, who will speak about how the book pertains to Next Chapter.
Hi there, I'm Spencer Watson, and I coded and developed #nextchapter.com. Program or Be Programmed argues that in order to not be controlled by digital technologies, we must learn and understand that which is so ubiquitous around us. The book is a thoughtful approach to technology, one that everyone can enjoy and find useful in their lives. 1,000 copies of this book have been purchased and distributed to organizations, schools, and individuals throughout the city. The books are given labels with QR codes that make it possible for people to log the book's location on the Google map provided on our website. The idea was that once someone reads the book and finishes it, they can pass it on to a friend, and we can watch as the books are travel around the city being shared by readers. Some of our books have gone as far as Washington, D.C., and we've received hits on our website from places such as Australia, Brazil, and India.
Thank you, Spencer. I'm Ina Bauer, and like Leah, I have served as a designer on the project. I have a question for all of you. How many of you have read the book Program or Be Programmed? Wow, this is excellent. It was a required reading for the CMBC program, and I know that the students visiting from Clark College have also read it. So let me tell you about the author. Douglas is a graduate of Princeton. He has a PhD at Utrecht University's New Media program and a master's degree in fine arts from the California Art Institute. He started receiving attention in the 1990s with his writing on the cyberpunk movement that explored the intersection of technology, society, and culture. His book Siberia, which was published in 1994, is considered by people in my field as a pioneering book. It talked about topics like the electronic village, cyborgs, memes, and other concepts that are quite common today. And as ideas about media virus and social contagion have also become accepted concepts. His new book, which was released just last month, is entitled Present Shock. I'm betting the CMDC students will be reading this book next semester.
Thank you, Emily. My name is Cameron Whitman, and I'm the mobile app developer for Next Chapter. Douglas does more than write books. He also makes award-winning documentaries, gives commentaries on NPR, hosts his own radio program on WFMU, and serves as the technology and media coordinator for CNN. If this isn't enough, he also teaches at NYU's Interactive Telecommunications program and the New School University. He serves on numerous boards like the National Advisory Board of the National Association for Media Literacy Education. He also appears on television like the NBC Nightly News, the Colbert Report, and Bill Maher. You can see why we are so pleased to introduce to you Douglas Rushkoff, and why his book was chosen as the first book in the citywide reading program. Once again, we thank you for coming today and joining us for this very special event. We would like to introduce to you formally Douglas Rushkoff.
It's better than saying test. I was at a Jay-Z show, and that's where they did go. Now on digital age. So yeah, I'm doing this talk now, and then I'm doing a kind of more regular public talk tonight. So I thought what I would do is tell the absolute truth today, because we're here in the safety of a school, right? And we're amongst friends and family. And then tonight, especially for those of you who actually go to today and tonight you can see the way these ideas can be presented to the public, right? Where they'll be a little bit less threatening, because it can be couched, right, in different terms. I mean, the truth is, and the gist of what I want to argue is that, yeah, learning a program, learning digital technology and all that is really important for living in a digital age. But accepting the digital media environment that we're living in and the ability to actually write the rules of this environment as we go along is a more profound shift. It's a more destabilizing shift. It's a bigger thing than just a new technology, right? It's going to change the way we think of ourselves as people, as parishioners, as students, as employees, as business people, as citizens, and as humans. But that's what I want to share. And specifically, where the ground rules really change. What programming really means. Right? When we're not just talking about programming the machine, but programming the society that we're in, programming the government that runs our country, programming the economy, and seeing the underlying programs that are running all these things, and figuring out how can we participate in that. I mean, this talk is called Program or Be Program, play, participation, and power, right? That's what I'm talking about. Play, participation, and power. And really they go in that order, right? If you can play, you can participate, and if you can participate, you can have power. Right, so let's start with play. Right? Play is the easy one, the fun one, right? The most public one we can talk about. Play. We all like to play. Play is good, right? So let's think of digital technology as play. And I talk a little bit about this in the book. but the idea of the great metaphor, but it's a real example and a metaphor for digital technology, is video games. Right? We've all played video games or seen video games. Right? Now, when you get a video game, when a kid gets a video game, first they play this game out of the box the way it was meant to be played. Right? They just pop in the cartridge and you fight and kick and scream and do. Right? You keep going and going and going until you get stuck. Right? You get stuck and you get stuck and you get stuck. When the kid gets stuck too much and is too frustrated, what do? Right, they go online and they get the cheat codes for the game. Right, we call them cheat codes, right? They have their codes, they're there, right? You go online, you get the cheat codes, you come back to the game, and your cheat codes basically, for those of you who don't know, cheat codes is a way you just do a little thing to the controller while the game is starting up, you know, a little secret code that you put in there, and then you've got, you know, infinite ammunition, or you have super shielding, or you have, you know, 100 lives instead of 3. Right? That's what a cheat code gives you. So now with the cheat code, you can now make it to the end of the game. Right? You can get up this level, and that level, and that level, and that level. So instead of playing the game just rules, whatever they are, now you know what those rules are, and you know around them. So you're playing outside the original construct of the game. You're playing kind of a meta game. You're playing the game as a cheater, and you get to the very end. It's a great game, you've made it to the end of the game, but you love this game, and you've played it a whole bunch of times now, maybe you played it as a cheater, maybe now you've gotten so good you can play it without the cheat codes. What does a great gamer do? Right, you mod the game. What does that mean? It means that now, if you're playing Doom and you're in the dungeons killing aliens or dragons or monsters down there, you know, that's the normal way you play the game. If you mod the game, it means you go online, you download the engine for the game. You download a kit, basically, a developer's kit for the game that now lets you say, well, instead of doing these corridors of a dungeon, I'm going to put in my own image files and make it the corridors of my high school. Right? Instead of these monsters, I'm going to have my teachers. Right? And everyone's going to get upset that this is going to be the next Littleton, disaster, whatever, but this is cool, right? I've taken the game and I've modded it to the way I want it to be. Or I can mod it further. I can say, instead of this being gun, this is going to be a magic wand. Instead of killing people, it's going to transform people from humans into deities, or from deities into fairies. You know, make it whatever I want. Not killing, now it's happy. A happy game. Right, so it's gone from Dungeons and Dragons to, you know, fairies and goblins, or whatever. Right, so now I've gone from being a player of the game, to being a cheater of the game, to being not really a programmer, but an author, right? A writer of the game, an author of the game. Now, if I'm really good, right, I upload the level of the game, the way that I've modded the game, my mod of the game, or Doom WAD as we used to call them. I upload that to the bulletin board, and people start downloading it. Right, now it's social all of a sudden. Right, people love this level of the game that I've made, it's all cool, they're writing about it, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 downloads. And all of a sudden, what happens? I get noticed by the game company. Hey, you wrote a great level of that game. You want to come be a game designer. You want to be a real game programmer. And now I can go and design my own game engine. Right now I go and actually learn how to code this thing so I can be not just a player, not just a cheater, not just an author, but a programmer. Right? Which is sort of the deepest level that I can go to at that point. I mean, yeah, there's deeper levels if you want to really get technical. You can say, well, you could also design the operating system on which the game is being played, or you could develop the chip architecture on which that. I mean, it goes. But as far as the game is concerned, that's about as deep as you go now. Right now, I'm designing the game itself. I'm going to figure out how it's actually going to work, and let other people play, cheat, author, and program on top of there. Now, that progression, right, I would argue, is the progression that each of us can go with digital technology. Right? Each of us can be just the player, who's not really a player at all, but is kind of passive, right? You're just sort of playing in this world, but you don't understand the rules. Each of us can get into the level where we can mod something and understand, oh, I can actually mod this to the way I want, rather than just continually conforming me and my workflow and my lifestyle to the way this program came out of the box. I don't have to use default settings. I'm not a default person. I'm a strange person, right? I want it to be more interesting. Right? Or we can go deeper and say, no, I'm going to actually create my own content with this. Or deeper still, say, no, I'm going to make my own. I'm just going to build from scratch. I don't even want this. Or I'm going to mod it to the point, hack it to the point where it's not even recognizable to the people who made it. You know, they could either pay me or sue me at this point, right? They've gone all the way. So while that's I would argue is the pathway, the sort of evolutionary pathway, not to get controversial, the evolutionary path, using the word likely, not scientifically, don't worry. The evolutionary pathway through digital technology, it's also the evolutionary pathway that I think our civilization has gone through with respect to media itself. Right? We used to live in what we called the prehistoric age. We didn't know it was prehistoric, right? It was just the way things were. Right? We had no text, we had no media, we had nothing. We could grunt and we'd speak a bit at each other. Right? And the world just was. Right? Pharaoh or somebody would tell us, you know, how things were, and you just lived, right? Some years you'd have crops, some years you wouldn't have crops. Some years you'd have kids, some years your kids would die. Some years your tribe would do well, some years you'd get beaten up by neighbors. You really didn't know. Right? That's back when people did sacrifice and human sacrifice, all sorts of weird stuff. Because they just had no way to control what was going on. They just lived in it, like a kid who's playing the game out of the box. Just shoot at things and try to get to other places. Right? It was just like one long game of Temple Run. I don't know if you played that. It just keeps coming at you, right? It just keeps coming. Right? With the invention of text, right, that all changed. Right? With the invention of text, we could now write down the rules. Right? Text is the thing that actually moved us from being players to being what we could call cheaters. With text, we had the cheat. What did we get when we started with text? Well, the first documents we wrote down were contracts. Because text let us travel in time, right? I'm growing this crop now, but I promise I will let you have this much of it in the future if you work on it now. Right? We had accountability with the invention of text. And what's the biggest contract we wrote at that time? We wrote the Torah, right? We wrote Torah, we wrote the first 5 books of the Bible, which is what? It's a covenant. It's a contract with God. It's a new way to say, okay, now we're going to have some ground rules here, right? If we do this, you're going to do that, right? If I live like this, I'm going to get to go to heaven or something, right? It's like, it's a contract. That's why they call it the covenant. It's a contract. It's an agreement. Now, with those rules, now you know what you can do. You can either live by the rules, you get your 10 Commandments, you get your laws, you get your Talmud, we can have the rules, you can live by them, or you can cheat. But at least now you know what cheating is. Right? You had no cheating before you had rules, before you had law. So now we're at that level where human beings have this much agency. Right? Where they can decide to have a rule and not. Right? When we get to the printing press, in the next Renaissance, 1,000 or so years later, I guess 2,000 years after text, we get the printing press. Now what do we get? Now we get basically civilization in theory, a civilization of authors. Right? Now we can write stories and distribute them to everybody. Now it's not just one little monk writing something that's been paid for by a king or the pope or whoever. Now, in theory, we get a literate culture of people who can author. And finally, with digital technology, we get the ability to program. Right now we can actually make these things, make programs that carry out into the future, that play out. At least that's the way I like to think about it. Because in theory, that's the bias of each of these technologies. But what really seemed to have happened was we've stayed one stage behind the possibilities each of these technologies have offered us, each of these media environments have offered us. Right, we got text, but we didn't really get a civilization of people who read. We got a civilization of people who would come to the town square and listen to the Torah be read to them by the rabbi or the priest. And so there was an elite who learned to read and write, maybe. But the people, what did they get? The people at that point got what the Pharaoh and the elites had in the old system. In the old system, it was the Pharaoh who could hear the word of God and then tell everybody what was supposed to happen. So now people could hear the word of God, but it was being read to them by a new elite. Or we get the printing press. in the Renaissance, did we really get, after the printing press, did we get a civilization of writers? No, we got a civilization of readers. And an elite of writers. We don't talk about it that much, but when the printing press came up, the kings would go and they would smash unauthorized printing presses and kill the people who ran them. Printing presses was like having a skill in the prohibition. Right? The technology turned out it wasn't even so big. It wasn't like a cannon or something that was really hard to make. Movable type was considered restricted. You had to have an authorized one, or you might even be printing money, which is something else we'll get into. And finally now we get computers. Do we get a nation of programmers? No, what do? We get a nation of writers. Interestingly enough, we get a nation of bloggers. So we, in each of these stages, we the people, as it were, the regular civilization, we get the facility associated with the last Renaissance, the discarded Renaissance. And a new elite gets the skills of the current one. Who knows how to program now? Really, only one group knows how to program now. It's corporations. And a little bit of government. They're the only ones who do. And what are we doing? We're writing text in the blog windows. We're writing our little on Facebook. We're tweeting. I mean, yeah, there's power in writing. Don't get me wrong, I'm an author, right? I believe in the power of writing, but the reason why writing's not valued anymore, no one wants to pay for it anymore, is because everybody does it. Right, the thing we're starting to pay for is this next thing. Now my concern, right, as a humanist and a thinker and an activist and a somewhat radical person, I guess, is that when these opportunities come for people to actually embrace a new technology, for people to embrace the facility, the competency, the literacy of their time, they don't. Right? Because we think it's just some awful, boring, whatever thing. Or because we don't even know it's a competency that's there. It's because we mistake the competency of the last era for the one that's being offered now. And each time we do that, I worry that we surrender a bit more of our agency in the bargain. Because each of these media environments, each of these technologies is increasingly powerful. You know, the difference between an industrial age technology and a digital age technology is huge. Right? It's like the difference between a visit to a museum and being slapped in a ride at Disney World and conveyed through something. That's the way digital technology is. Once you're in, it goes. It's got a program. It's got a timeline. It's going to go. And digital age technologies are not just computers. We're looking at robotics, genomics, nano. What are these things? I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying they're what? Right? These are programs. These are things that carry on. These are things that once they're set in motion, they continue. They replicate. They try to survive. They change. And they change the rest of the world along with themselves. So if we aren't participating in programming them, who is? And with what agendas? Right? Is my agenda the same as Monsanto's? Maybe. I want to feed the world, you know? God bless. I just don't know for sure, you know? I don't know for sure. It's possible, not likely. Right, but it's possible that Monsanto's #1 goal is to serve its shareholders short-term bottom line interest, right? Quarter to quarter to quarter. Because that's what's written down in the program, in the actual corporate documents as to what their job is. The fiduciary responsibility of the people running that company is quarter over quarter, year over year earnings, not the health and welfare of these humans. And so when I look at digital technology, what I'm looking at is how deep can we go? Can we go from players to cheaters to authors to programmers? And if we're living in a digital media environment, then everything I look at, as I see it, is a program. And I want to know, is there play in this? Is there opportunity for participation in this? Genuine participation. And can I restore the power of humans in this equation? On each and every one of them. The possibility of a digital era is for something bigger than revolution. Right? Revolutions are, they're so 20th century. Really, they are. They're so industrial age. What are they? They're revolutions. They go in a circle. These ones take over, and then they repress, and then these ones goes around in a circle. But what I'm talking about is Renaissance, which is what? The rebirth of the old in a new context. A Renaissance is the retrieval of values that have been repressed for a whole long time. Generally, values that have been repressed since the last Renaissance. And we always, whoever wins history gets to write the history books, right? We think of the Renaissance as this great, oh, great. That's when painters got all this money from patrons to do cool things. Why did they need money from patrons to do all these cool things? Right? Because the peer-to-peer medieval society that was actually more cool than the Renaissance, that was repressed. They lived in a society where you needed some rich person to give you money in order to paint something. Like, oh, we're going to flip it. Right? The possibilities of the digital age, and I've talked about this a lot in the book, so I don't need to go into them so much, is that we can get now this sort of bottom-up, people-driven economy, right? We can just do this stuff. Right? 2 kids with a laptop, with a $500 or $400, how much is a Google laptop now? 3, 2? $200 laptop can build the whole damn thing. No venture capital, no banking investment, just a thing. Pop it in the iTunes store if you want, or the Android store, no store, and bing, bang, boom, you're done. That's destabilizing, right? That's destabilizing. But what we're witnessing in the digital age economy, or what we're calling the digital age economy, instead is a kind of, and this is what I've been watching since the mid-90s, a desperate attempt by Wall Street and by its agents in the form of like Wired magazine and the whole sort of digerati press to recast this thing as an extension of the industrial age. Right? When digital technology came around, right, the early 90s, late 80s, I was a slacker. I remember that movie, Rick Linklater did this movie Slacker. It's kind of that whole Bart Simpson thing where you don't want to be a yuppie scum. Instead, you want to be someone who has more time to think about things and read and write and play and talk. You want to be kind of a weird, intellectual, fun person instead of a corporate drone. And that was our goal. And when the net came around, we thought, here it is. This is the technology that is going to let us work in our own time, in our underwear, from our home. Right, sort of Etsy writ large. Right? I don't have to get a job. I mean, what's a job anyway? I've written about that. What's a job? We keep saying that there's got a jobs problem in this country. You don't have a jobs problem. Who wants a job? I want the stuff. Right? I don't need a job. What's the job for? Is it because there's not enough stuff? We need more workers here to make more stuff for America? No, we have more than enough stuff. We have so many houses in California, we're tearing them down to keep market prices high. We burn food every week. We have more than enough stuff. We need people to have jobs so that we have a justification for divvying out the stuff that we already have in abundance. We can't just let you live in those houses. Right? So we're going to have to find something for you to do. Right? And you're going to have to make stuff, and yes, it's going to pollute the ground and screw up things, but then there'll be more jobs to clean it up. Deal with the cancers. More jobs, yay! Right, there's a problem with the program, but we can't go there, there's too leftist. Isn't that weird though, leftist? It's like, okay, we made these machines that could do all this work so people can have more fun and play and have sex. That's leftist, no. Don't have fun, because it doesn't contribute to the GNP. It doesn't, it's just having fun. Cancer contributes to the GNP. That's another story. So what we've done, though, the thing I'm concerned about, what we've done is we've taken the values and priorities of the industrial age and tried to amplify them through digital technology. Right? So instead of doing things on our own time, right, we kind of strap all the devices to ourselves and put ourselves in emergency room 911 in the air traffic controller mode all the time. Right? That always-onness. And it's not the always on this for my friends and things that I'm so concerned about, it's the always on this for work. Right? We've taken the industrial age clock, right? The time is money industrial age clock, which is really itself just an artifact of industrial age money that was invented in 1100 with a clock in it. Central bank loans out this money at interest. You have to pay it back in time and more than you borrowed. That's a money system. That's an operating system. It's an operating system that requires expansion, that supported colonialism. Good thing, right? We got to squish other people and take their territory and all that. It supported all that because we had a growth imperative. But what happens when you don't really need to grow anymore? Right? What happens when you reach sort of the end of the planet? And we just discovered maybe 3 planets outside the solar system that we think might support life. But that's not really an economic expansion policy. Right? That's a difficult one to get people over there. Right? But we set in motion that thing. We gotta grow, we gotta grow. And it looked like, biotech was gonna be the big growth thing at the end of the 80s, but then there was this biotech crash in 1987, and everybody was freaked out. But then digital technology came. It was like, okay, we can't grow in more territories because there's all these people in Africa and South America that don't just want loans from the World Bank and the IMF anymore. They don't want to pay it back, and they're angry and mean, and we're gonna just leave. Right? But we have digital. So with digital, we can get growth. We have infinite real estate online. So they started spreading. This is it. Then Wired comes and said, this is the new age, the digital age. We're going to extend. The economy can be saved. The corporations can be saved. Even though corporate profit over net worth has been shrinking over the last 60 years, we can grow, have jobs and stuff, and go, 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 and the dollar will be saved. But what did they find out? That even though we had infinite real estate online, there wasn't infinite human time to sell us stuff. Right? They started talking about human time as eyeball hours. That's a real unit of measurement that appeared in Wired and everywhere. How many eyeball hours does someone have in a day? And we've got to get more eyeball hours on our website, so we're going to make them sticky. That's what they used to call websites. They wanted them to be sticky so people would pay more attention to these things. So what were they doing, really? They ran out of space to colonize, so they started colonizing human time. Right? Anytime that you're not either working online or consuming online, which is a form of work as far as I'm concerned, is a problem. Right? So more and more time has to be spent online engaged with these machines. Right? They were looking really economically, because they were looking for a new surface area for debt. Right? And instead of that surface area being South America or Africa, the surface area became human attention. Meanwhile, the real digital age of people who were digitally literate, the digital age for people who are actually digital participants, programmers instead of just writers, right? That would be a peer-to-peer universe. That would look more like Etsy. That would look more bottom-up. And that would threaten traditional corporate capitalism, which is why it's a big problem, which is why it's so hard for people to get their heads around. I mean, yes, I understand we want money and stuff, but the digital age is not one that's going to be characterized, and maybe not this year, next year, 10 years, or 20 years. It's not going to be characterized by people working for other people, working for big companies. There'll be a few. They'll still be your Apple and your Monsanto and your this and your that. But more and more stuff's going to be happening directly. It's going to be happening in peer-to-peer fashion over networks, or happening locally. We can either, and right now we are, use programs to facilitate, corporatism, right? To facilitate the migration of corporations into cyberspace, which is their native terrain, not ours. We live on the Earth. We're humans. We're biological. Corporations are abstract. They're fine. They can live there. That's their turf. We can either continue their migration there and then continue optimizing ourselves for those programs, right? Or we can write programs to produce an exchange value amongst ourselves. Right? That's the big shift to digital. But what does digital even mean? And that's why I did 10 commands. Digital. These are the digits. Right? The digits, that's them. When you return to the digits, what is that? That means we're back in production mode. Right? That's what a renaissance is when we retrieve values from the last age. What values are we retrieving from the pre-Renaissance? Craftsmanship. People actually doing things. Before the Renaissance, before time is money, before the punch clock, people didn't work by the hour. That's a very modern notion. Working by the hour, selling your time. No, people made stuff and sold it. I made a pair of shoes. Here, I'm selling them. I made this, I'm selling that. How many did you make today? Right? And we sold them to other people. You sold them in a peer-to-peer fashion. Right? That was outlawed, peer-to-peer. Peer-to-peer marketplaces were outlawed. You had to work for what were called chartered monopolies instead. It was a program. Peer-to-peer currencies were outlawed. You had to borrow money from the central treasury. Coin of the realm. It's punishable by death if you used other coins. They said it was other gods. So you had other gods on your coin other than the king. Right, but what was it? It was just making peer-to-peer transaction illegal. Right? We've got the ability to make that happen again. Right? And that's why I keep talking about commands. It's funny, people translate this as commandments a lot, especially in other languages. The 10 Commandments for a digital age. No, commandments are what we got in the text age. Commandments is the way we've been living. Commandments is what consumers take. We take commandments, and workers take. Commands is not something you get. So commands are things you give. Commands are things you enact. When I say 10 commands, I mean taking command of the digital age. This is not about, these are rules you have to follow. Right? These are ways to program the tools that you use, because you are programming them, whether you know it or not. Even accepting it on default, that's the way you're programming your life then. That's the way you're programming your job. Right? You can take commandments to work and buy more things, or you can act commands to try to make your life more human. Right? The object of the game, I think, is to try to figure out how deep your play really is, and to be able to distinguish between the false play offered by most of these programs, by most of these entities, and the real play that might be possible. Right? Take investing. Now everybody's got E-Trade, and Scottrade, and Charles Schwab, these websites that let you go and buy and sell stock. And everybody goes, good, I'm going to disintermediate my stockbroker, that mean guy who has a yacht, and I'm going to use the internet to buy and sell my own stocks based on the information that I read on the street and watch on CNBC. I'm in charge, right? I'm going to be like Rushkoff says. I'm in charge. I'm programming the economy now. And we know that people who go online and do the stock trading end up losing more money trading themselves than they lost before with the brokers. The more they trade, the more they lose. And if they do get even mildly competent in one area, all of a sudden E-Trade or Scottrade will start sending them emails saying, oh, you should learn how to do futures trading, or commodities trading, or some other derivative that you're not going to understand, that we're going to steal your shirt on. Right, so are they playing or not? No, they're not playing. They're in the game, but they're not playing. And even if they did know what they're doing, if you go on E-Trade or Charles Schwab and you make a trade, what really happens? Goldman Sachs is sitting there watching your trade, watching your order. And they're trading based on your order before your trade even goes through. Right? They make and execute an order based on what you intend to do. So they're literally trading in your future. And you think you're going to win at that game. Right? That's an invitation to play, but it's not genuine play. There's no play in that steering wheel. The only place you can see where the game is when does government get involved? When do they start saying this is illegal? When do they say you can't play no? When do they do that? Right? They did it to PayPal. Right? The then kids who started PayPal, they weren't charging for PayPal. It was free. They were going to make all their money on what's called the float. Right? You would pay money to someone, they would hold it for whatever, 24 hours, 48 hours, they would make money by having that money, right? They would make the interest on that money and then give it to the next person. It was like, wow, this was going to create really liquid transactions if there's no drag on it, right? They're not paying anything, no fee. But what happened? The banks said, oh, wait a minute. You can't let PayPal do that. You know, they're not a bank. They're not one of us. Right? So instead, they had a partner. They had a partner with real banks, right? With Visa and everyone else. Because they're not a bank. Or charge. Right? So they charge. So that's how you know, oh, there's something interesting there. Right? That's the part that's being protected, is this transaction part. Because we have the ability to transact. I got this, I got whatever. How many 12K million authentication? It used to be 512. It's probably better now. I've got authentication here that's better than any counterfeit, avoidance system that's in my printed currency. We could do peer-to-peer transactions right now that are more secure than whatever the Treasury Department's got going. So why are we using their money, their expensive money that we have to pay back in interest? That's driving our, well, we don't have to. And so we see the glimmerance of it. It may be Bitcoin. Heard about Bitcoin? It's interesting. First step, I mean, Bitcoin is silly on a certain level because it's not transactional. It's not a let's system writ large. It's not time dollars. It's not a favor bank, which would be totally easy to do. Just throw it on here. I mean, what Bitcoin is another central currency, except it's got its scarcity is created differently, right? Scarcity isn't dependent on some central bank, right, or some government. Its scarcity is based on cycles. So again, it's just destabilizing. It's just saying, ooh. But who's willing to really do that? Who's willing to go that distance? So few. We look at Google and Facebook and say, oh, look at these great new digital age companies. And Google's so happy disrupting the search business, right? Amazon's happy disrupting the bookstores. Right? Facebook's happy disrupting childhood. Okay, we're leaving, right? But what do these companies finally do? What's the unacknowledged operating system that they're all sitting on top of? Banking. Right? And Zuckerberg and these guys, are they really going to be our heroes? What are they really raising? I'm going to just get to my Series B round. My VC to get my thing. And what are they doing? They're disrupting everything but the thing that they're sitting on top of, which is the stock market, which ruins their lives. Do you think Zuckerberg has more fun working for shareholders than he did just writing a crazy program, Facebook thingy? Do you think it's fun to be at Google when they have to answer again? They're answering to shareholders who do not care about the company. I mean, what does it mean to be a shareholder? You all have, whatever, retirement plans and things like that with S&P 500 index funds in it. You know what's in there, right? That's the nastiest of the nasty stuff. Right? That's the smelting mining companies in the Philippines that are destroying the topsoil and it's our evil, right? But it's so removed. It's just an index. But that's us. That's our evil selves. Those are evil twins. And that's who these guys have to answer to now. Right? If they were really going to destabilize, they would create companies that don't need to depend on that. They would create just sustainable companies. What about making a company that you don't intend to sell? I know it's a shocking idea, right? What's the purpose of this company? Oh, just to do well over time, just to grow, okay? Or even not. What about a sustainable company? Is there such a thing? I mean, wouldn't a sustainable company, right? Now, what a sustainable company, a company that gets to a certain size and it just works like that. That's what we do. We sell the stuff, we have this many employees, we do that. It's just what it does. Wouldn't a sustainable company be so much more consonant with a world where we're looking for kind of sustainable solutions and resource depletion and hunger and whatever? Wouldn't that work? Of course it would work, but they can't think of it, right? Because these guys are not really programmers, as I'm saying it. They know the code, they know jQuery, but they don't look at the world really as programmers. They look at machines as programmers. What I I'm saying, and this I won't say tonight, but what I'm saying is that the implication, if you really get it, if you get digital technology and what it means to live in a digital media environment, you realize that we're not just in charge of the machines, we're in charge of it all. And I assure you this, 99% of the places that look locked, 99% of the cultural programs that are not up for discussion, they're not being consciously guarded by anyone anymore. Bankers don't know that they're guarding central currency as the only means of exchange and transaction. They don't know that. It's been passed. They don't know that there's others. I've talked to the heads of all these banks. I've talked to Federal Reserve chairman or assistant chairman, whatever they are. Blinder, what does he count as? What was he? Associate chairman, deputy chair. They don't know about medieval currencies. They don't remember that people died in wars trying to fight to preserve their means of transaction. They don't know Philip the Fair of France, who went with the Knights Templar and wiped out the people who were using alternative coin. They don't know. It's like advertising people who never read Bernays and Walter Lippmann. Advertising people today don't even know that their entire science is based on the presumption that people are stupid and need elites to tell them how to live. They don't know that. They just follow the orders of the last generation. They just open the book. It's like, oh, what are we supposed to do? They're blindly following the rules. Right, but living in a digital age, if we're going to live in it as humans, right, rather than conform ourselves to the machines, which are conforming themselves to the corporations, living in a digital age means taking command of all of these systems. Digital technology gives us alternatives, right? Digital technology gives us peer-to-peer mechanisms. Digital technology gives us ways of undermining the programs that we don't like, the extant programs of the industrial age. So that's where it really comes into play. But more importantly, the digital media environment, the environment of programming, right, is one where we can take back civilization from people who died centuries ago, right, but left their systems in place that we're just adhering to and conforming to out of habit, out of behavior, rather than for any genuine human need or desire. Right? It's just back to the whole idea of I have to get a job, I have to get a job. Right? Why do we have to get a job? Just think about it for a minute, right? And look back at what people like Norbert Wiener wrote, and Vannevar Bush, and James Licklider, the folks who invented this net to begin with. They were talking about robots plowing the fields so that people could sit back and become smart, about moving into a genuinely creative economy. You know, where we could sell video games and stuff to each other, or have fun, or not even sell. I mean, that we can't even entertain such notions, right, is what I mean to correct, and what I hope you guys can correct. Subtly, not directly. This is not fit for public consumption. It'll upset people. They'll get confused. They're going to think it's Marxism or something, right? You know, it's probably closer, I don't know, I've got to read, probably closer to John Stuart Mill. You know, I think that sort of steady state economy, right? What if we moved into a world that didn't have to grow anymore? Right? It's sort of like civilization reaches middle age and goes, okay, we're not striving towards this thing. We don't have to make progress. We don't have to grow and bigger and better, but we can actually just be. It's okay to be. We have enough stuff. We're good. We're good. You know, it's that sort of just, let's just have a moment in the chill out room. Right? Yeah. We deserve it. We deserve it. Okay, I don't want to over program you. I mean, I'm really what I'm arguing for here is that beyond as students, you know, as you look at the digital landscape ahead, it's much less about employment than it is about exercising your entrepreneurial energies. You know, those of you who will be prosperous and thrive long term, I suspect, are the ones who are going to leverage this towards creating things rather than preserving things. Right? Most of the companies companies who want to hire you are looking for ways not to do new things, but to somehow keep doing what they're doing the way they're doing it, and use digital technology to stave off the inevitable decline. And that's just not a fun way to go, and it's a doomed way to go. Whereas you guys actually have the tools to be entrepreneurial, which means to develop things, to develop small, think small. You know, really think small and incremental, and just watch how it grows. Watch what happens when you think of yourself. And you're Johnny Appleseed, and plant the seeds, and do the stuff, and grow your own little businesses. You know, before taking on the legacies of these dying beasts, right? Which you don't even need, right? They're not giving you security. They're not even the health plans stink when it comes right down to it. They do. I mean, they're not giving anything. There's no 401k plan. There's no retirement. There's no pension. There's no security. It's just without any of that, why sell your time rather than transact your skill, right? Rather than program stuff that you actually believe in. And there's that. This is that moment. This is that decade or two. I mean, it's a unique opportunity you guys have over any generation of the last maybe 600 years. So I would 700 years actually. I would take advantage of it. Cool. But let's talk. Let's use this to converse. Do you guys have thoughts, questions, concerns? They can be related or not to anything we talked about. Yeah.
I got a question, because you're talking about like two different kinds of programs, writing code versus changing structure. When you say that, I think of work of people like Johann Benkler or Richard Stallman, who are talking about doing things in a different way, not just doing the same thing. Is that sort of on the right track, or are there other of this programmer B people that we should be reading?
Only read Rushkoff. Yeah, I mean, interestingly enough, I mean, books, I hate to admit it, but books are not the central form of media in this era.
But there's still
There are. There's still writers and thinkers and people out there. I mean, there's some things that need to be said book length, but not, not everything does. I mean, I teach courses, and there's a ton of books. I mean, I would read Jaron Lanier's book, or his new book he's got, which is sort of more, it's funny, we're all going economic, because we're realizing that that's the program, the unquestioned program, right? I wrote a book about Judaism, I wrote a book about government, wrote a book about business, and then I realized, oh, the real sacred one is economics, that people are not questioning that. So Howard Rheingold's book is particularly good for that. But I would go back to McLuhan and Understanding Media, and you start to look at that. I would look at who's it that talks about resilient technologies and all that. No, Lessig's cool for government corruption and all that. No, he is. Lessig's basically writing about how he's writing about the corporate program. And how the corporate program, just like what happened with the gun law yesterday. It's like, oh, well, maybe 90% of people don't want it, but if this really virulent, majority. A rule is fun. I mean, what the heck? Yeah, I mean, there's a ton. I mean, I look in the bibliography of my book. I mean, I'm starting to read old stuff because I want to see. I mean, that's why I'm going to read Mill. I'm going to look at that. And I have a strange reading history. I would read people who challenge the underlying program more than digital theorists. I would look at Robert Anton Wilson's Cosmic Trigger. I would look at Hakeem Bey. Look at William Burroughs. I mean, that's where I come from, right? So I mean, everyone's going to have their own path towards. Seeing these things. It also depends on what systems you want to play with. If you want to start playing with religion, read Spinoza, read Maimonides. These guys were religious hackers. If you want to do science, there's a whole other range of people. Read Rupert Sheldrake's stuff now. It's really interesting. Because what Rupert Sheldrake's a scientist, and what he's arguing is, but what if the laws of science change? What if the laws of science themselves evolve over time? What if the speed of light doesn't remain truly constant, but is almost like weather, that it changes? And what does that mean? So that rather than getting to rely on the laws of physics, what if we realize the laws of physics might actually be mutable? I mean, that's a fun one. So I really like anybody who's doing lateral thinking, challenging underlying assumptions, because that's what keeps us alive and human and kind of fertilized.
I may not be able to get around quickly enough to hand the microphone to you, so if you'll ask a question as loud as you can, and I'll ask Doug to repeat it.
Yeah.
So we're talking about like social connections, what's really going to help us grow and get around corporations. But I look at it as a normal person, and I see that literally corporations are trying to monopolize social connections. I look at Apple, Facebook, and Microsoft, and they're trying to log in and analyze how I communicate. So like, how do I get around that? How do we look at Facebook profiting on our social connections?
Yeah.
What do I do to?
Well, I don't participate on Facebook. All right, I left a month or so ago. It was just like, it's a friggin' Tupperware party. It's not real, right? It was created by a company. I mean, and talk about time compression. If you're on Facebook, some kid from second grade who you knew is going to try to friend you. Your past is coming careening back to you. You don't get that distance that you had. I got away from second grade. It took me so long. They're the same size as everyone in my now. Meanwhile, Facebook is sending me, through big data analysis, they're sending me ads from my own future. Right? Facebook knows who's going to be gay, who's going to get pregnant, who's going to get sick. They know this about who's going to go on a diet using factor analysis and statistical analysis. But by crunching big data, they know all that with surprising accuracy what's coming down the pipe. So they're sending me messages from a future version of myself that may or may not be the direction I really want to go in if I'm a thinking human with agency. No, that's awful. I mean, screw that. Right? I mean, right now, anyway, I mean, it's a matter of being, that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. Can you go into a digital media environment, can you go into a digital platform and sense whether it's serving you or whether you're being served? Right? When I look at Twitter, I don't have that same feeling, that same quicksand, horrible feeling of being in a manipulative environment. Right? But Facebook, I was lucky because I was around before Facebook, so I didn't grow up with it as a given condition. Right? When I grew up, I remember when we first had websites. On websites were so individual. Every website looked different. We all constructed them differently. You had a cat one, you had an author one, you had a spaceman one. Then we kind of went on to, or a lot of you went on to MySpace, which was still somewhat personalized. And then you move into Facebook, which is cookie cutter. Right? It's just radio buttons. Why? Because Facebook is not self-expression. So Facebook is an opportunity to use corporate detritus in order to express who you are. Right? It's the equivalent when I was a kid, we'd go to Spencer Gifts in the mall, and you buy posters of bands and stick them on the wall of your room, reflect it back to yourself. Well, now you're going to the kind of Spencer Gifts of the net and projecting it out to the world. The walls of your bedroom are billboards to the rest of the known universe. I mean, no. So I think it's a matter, I mean, there are alternatives emerging. I mean, I was talking with the guys yesterday who do app.net. And app.net is they're going meta, right? App.net is a platform on which people can build social applications. Right? So they're trying to make it really easy for people to build alternatives to Facebook. And basically everybody who uses one of the applications on it has a data set. And then you can just port your data set from one thing to another. So it could be your data set could be in Facebook one day, take it out of Facebook and put it into Twitter, take it out of that and put it into that. So your data is your own. It's more like having Dropbox. So all your social data, your social graph is your thing, not their thing. But Facebook owns your social graph. That's their property. Look at the user agreement. That's theirs. You can close your Facebook account. That stuff is still there. I mean, funny thing, when you try to close your account, it keeps popping up again. Obviously, you'll find it. They rebirth it and stick it back up there. There's really no way to kill it. But the data is theirs. Your big data is there. Right? Everything you do, I mean, you guys know this because you're in the inner club. Every keystroke you make online is tracked and recorded. I mean, you think your Gmail is going somewhere? It's not. It's a big file. You just try deleting that. Try it. And deleting it just means you can't see it anymore. Yeah.
So I'm interested, you're talking about the
higher ed, we have education that's right now predominantly being taught by that, what you call the command generation.
Yeah.
And then you've got this group that's grown up with digital technology, and you're saying, well, they'll be programmed, but they're being taught by people from that lag of Renaissance. So how do you keep yourself from being programmed? Because the old, I don't know, old world, I'm part of that,
Yeah.
But how do you?
Well, I think the people from our generation are actually slightly better equipped than people who are growing up in a digital media environment to see what the opportunity is here. Because we experienced the shift, right? If you are born on a drug, you don't know you're high, right? If you're alive and take the pill, then you know, oh, here's the difference, right? So, I feel that way with the net, that those of us who got it, who are old enough to understand what was happening to us as it happened, can sort of see the difference and can do a bit of pattern recognition that might not be available to people who are just in this, who are just in that realm. But almost everybody who's of age now has at least experienced enough transition. At least kids today, they experienced Twitter, they experienced the smartphone, so they experienced some of it. You know, I think it's a good, 100 years of transition, and it's the hinge generations that are the ones that really, I feel like, have more opportunity than anybody else. So I think we're all in that. Kids are in just as much, whether it's future shock or present shock, as we are, because it's changed that much. But yeah, I think we are responsible for embedding digital culture with the values that we want brought. And I think that's why I love reading McLuhan and real historians, because we can look back and see, well, what values were repressed the last time around? What can we now retrieve? There's a sort of window of opportunity. Things are liquid. Things are changing. Before it all gets set in stone again, what do we want to rebirth into this Renaissance? And you look at what is coming back. It's a lot of what are we getting now? What's happening? Yoga is coming back big time. Homeopathic medicine and herbal things, environmentalism, permaculture, organic farming, all of these technologies that we thought were kind of lost, but we realize are going to be essential. Right? When you take a piece of broccoli today, a piece of big agro broccoli, and find out that it's got like 50% less nutrients in it. They had to change the nutrient measurements of all our vegetables because the topsoil was so bad, broccoli doesn't have what broccoli had in the 1950s. There's so much less nutrients. So when we realized that, we're like, oh, we can actually take some of these old technologies, retrieve them, and live. I mean, the other weird thing going on is, because of how much we've done to ourselves. I would say environmentally, using the term broadly, both in terms of media environments and technology environments and polluted environments. When we look at how human neurology is changing, what a high percentage of kids are autism spectrum. How many bees can't hive anymore and bats can't cave anymore. I mean, it's really, we're in an interesting hinge moment. Yeah.
In your brief time here so far on this campus, what is your assessment of our program? Do you see it as cutting edge? Do you see it as progressive? Do you see it as mediocre at best? And what is your advice for the students in the program as well as the faculty and staff?
I'm very impressed actually with my brief time here. The thing, most schools make a false choice between privileged, isolated academia and job readiness. Right? So you go to, Harvard or Princeton or Yale or one of those places, and the idea that they'd be preparing you for the workplace kind of seems vulgar to them, right? Because it's so pure, right? This is just learning for learning's sake. And you go, on the other hand, the other extreme, you go to most community colleges, and the idea is everything we're going to talk to IBM, and talk to Procter & Gamble. We're going to find out what skills they want. We're going to teach the classes in those skills and deliver onto these corporations the employees that they're asking for. Which is what? It's a way of winding down and destroying society, right? Those corporations are already 5 years behind what they think they need anyway. They don't know. They're dumb. They're supposed to be dumb. What's going on here that I'm actually excited about is a weird hybridization of those two things. Is to say, we're going to do a challenging curriculum that makes people think in new ways, and then use students as Trojan horses, right, to companies that are going to pay these students to transform them from the inside out, right, which is the object of the game. Right, so it's real and applied, right? So you don't have to think, oh, this is just so in a vacuum that it's not real. You can actually experience, like the kids who won the award for doing this, you can experience the traction in a community. And at the same time, what are they doing? Right, they're undermining certain obsolete value systems in the community in order to get a municipality to go digital in an intelligent way. Right, so that's a very interesting twist. It's a very different relationship between community and academia, between the job market and theory. That if you can hold on to that, that's the new university. It's not the one that you end up $300,000 in debt when you're done with it. That's stupid, right? It's the one where you end up actually gainfully, not just gainfully employed, but gainfully engaged. While you're here, it just kind of continues as part of the continuum as you go on. That seems to be the model here.
Let's take one more question, and then you can join us for a reception across the hall where you can have more conversation with Dr. Rushkoff.
Hey.
Just wanted to talk about chapter 2 a little bit, and that's how you talk about the living in person and just the notion of place. As technologies get more dislocating with the use of mobile phones, more specifically with children using mobile phones, how do you get through to these kids the notion of time value and creating genuinely without the restraints of these mediums that they keep running into?
I mean, the tricky part is that we've got big companies spending hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, figuring out how to make this more seductive than y'all, right? And they're good at it, right? And it's not that this is more satisfying than real people, but this properly, or not properly, but deviously programmed, this can appeal to the pleasure centers in the brain, just like cocaine or anything else, right? If you do it right. So you get, I mean, why are we addicted to the emails? Because every 30 or 40 messages, there's that one good one. That makes it more addicting than if every message was good. It's the one-armed bandit strategy. You put in the quarter, ching, ching, ching. You know, when dopamine comes out. But if you didn't have the frustration leading up to that, it wouldn't do that. And that's calculated. They know it. These are computerized machines. It's not a mechanism in there. There's a computer in there. And it's a computer in here. Right? We're taking our best, smartest Stanford computer science graduates and figuring out how to do that. The ones who aren't doing that are figuring out the algorithms on the stock market that are sucking all your money out of you. Right? So if we're doing that, then how do we compete with that is the question. How do you make real life as good as this? How do you make real sex as good as this porn crap that they're watching, right? I mean, it's hard. It's hard, believe it or not. That's what it's gotten to. I mean, I think the way to do it is to create extended experience, extended real-time pleasurable experiences. You know, it's not in the first day that you get that other stuff, but it's in the second or third day. You take a vacation, you know, when you undo the stuff, you go to the beach, you go to the woods. That first night camping is just like, where's my cell phone? Why is there no reception? I mean, you know that one. But it's that second or third morning when you smell the campfire and you see the sun and you go, oh my God, you know, because then you reacquaint yourself with the underlying biological rhythms and things that make us human. So it's a hard one. I got an 8-year-old myself, and I'm wondering, you know, will it? That's why I left the city, you know, because I wanted her to experience things other than the grid pattern and a little bit of sky, a little bit of day and night and this and that. It's the biggest clue I have so far is to at least make available the natural rhythms of day and night and seasons and moon cycles, all that stuff that the human body has been calculating and registering on for so many hundreds of thousands of years. That does mean some practical things. It means no screen time after 4 or 5 o'clock. Period. No screen time at 4 or 5 o'clock because you're putting a color temperature of light into your eyes that you associate with day. So then you're not going to sleep as well. So then you're going to be even more alienated from all of that stuff that makes you human, all of that stuff that makes you flesh and blood. So it's sort of that's the best advice I have, you know, and help. I mean, there's so many things you can do for kids, but it's really help them understand and follow those rules yourself. To say these are the values in our family. Values in our family are we make eye contact when we speak to each other. It's a biggie, but kids don't do that. You know, we don't text at dinner, and Daddy doesn't text at dinner either. And the phone, unless it's Grandma dying, right? We're not going to pick up the phone either. These are our values as a family. And how does that work? We don't say these things online. When we're with people in a room, we're not texting them. Things like that. You know, and it's creating sacred places and sacred times where you get to be just human with other humans. You know, let's just have. That's what someone was asking. What's your advice? I said, take 5 minutes a day and be just incarnate. Start with 5 minutes, and maybe you'll get hunger for more.
Thought-provoking presentation and for all the conversation. And in respect for your visit to our campus, we have something for you. We have a CMDC t-shirt, of course. And we have some of the famous WSU Cougar Gold. And you can take that to the TSA. You may have to put it on the conveyor belt, but they recognize it in this part of the world.
Excellent. It's a sharp white.
So again, please join us across the hallway for more conversation and reception.
Jeez.
Jim, thanks for coming down.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Stuff, though, I kind of recognize some of the stuff, especially the economic sort of stuff from Marx a little bit.
Oh, thanks. Beautiful child, okay. Shana Boyle, that's what my grandmother would say. Can I get a...